Amen. Today we come to First Thessalonians 3, verse 4 through 5. And here we come to the end of this part, going from about 2:17 to 3:5, where Paul is longed to see them. And it's very much all flows along here. Paul longs to see them, wants to be there, can't. So that's why he sent Timothy. Taking a lot of wisdom at times, you have to do what you don't want to do. And in this case, standing back, not doing anything, purely out of care for the people that are in Thessalonica, for the people in the church, for the gospel, knowing that God knows best. Nevertheless, God did open the doors for Timothy to go. And that's where we are at for today. For when we were with you, you remember when we were with you. He had just, remember, we spent about 3 days going through that, where he had talked about his faith, their life. You remember what we were like. And so it's when we were with you, and this is a new one now. He had said, we had lived, you saw our faith, you saw our life, you saw how we acted, you saw how we were very fatherly, very motherly towards you. And we kept telling you beforehand that we were to suffer affliction. We let you know that we were going to suffer. Now, why do you tell beforehand and warn that these things are going to happen? So that when they happen, you are prepared. You are ready. That when they happen, we were told this was going to happen. Here it is. Okay. We get a lot of that in the book of Revelation. Why do we have all of the stuff in Revelation that's going forward, where we'll see worse and worse and all these things throughout the entire age of the church? And then when it comes towards the end, even more so when it happens. Why share? There'll be bad things. So that when those bad things happen, we were forewarned. Same thing in the Gospels. When Christ talks about the end times, Matthew goes extensively into that. All of this is done looking to this difficult time that will happen. And in this age of the church, there will be ups and downs. There will be times there will be, looks like it's so horrible right now, Christ could return tomorrow. And there'll be times where, okay, it's calmed down a little bit. But when the end times, and so throughout the age of the church, we're warned these things will happen. There will be affliction throughout, sometimes intense, sometimes a little calmer. Sometimes when we get to the end, or actually when we get to the end, very intense. How will we make it through? Well, it helps incredibly that this is already told us this will happen. Small, and when we get later in Thessalonians here, Paul's going to get talking about the end times as well. That's a couple chapters down the road. Coming back to right here, though. This, what has just happened that we're looking at here, is why the book of Revelation, is why we run into many of these talks of the end times by Christ and in the epistles and in Revelation. We find these things throughout all of the New Testament. Old Testament too, but that'd be a different, another 5-minute discussion. So we told you beforehand, and it has happened. So that when all of this affliction that has happened, you are warned. This will happen. But you go not alone. The Lord is with you. And just as I know, for this reason, because he knew that this was going to happen, and he forewarned them that this was going to happen, for that reasoning is why when he could bear it no longer, he was in prayer, he was worried, he was concerned, he wanted them to stay in the faith. That's why I sent to learn about your faith. I sent you Timothy because I loved you. I knew what was going to happen. I knew what was taking place. And I sent Timothy to lift you up, to exhort, to help, support, whatever needed to be. Because and this is Paul talking, Paul said, I fear it was my insecurities that somehow the tempter had tempted you and our labor would be in vain. Not that it was his labor that was mattered, but the faith of what was going on. And he feared that that would be in vain because the tempter may have won. And so he sent support. Same thing the church should always do when there's temptation, when there's affliction, when there's suffering. The church is called on to lift one another up. Too often, we see tearing down. We see putting aside. We see ignoring. We see, I don't want you anymore, and setting to the side. We see that far too often. The church, instead, in every circumstance, is to be there